Welcome to the all-time favorite mystery channel, Murder Insiders. Today we are going to talk about the murder which took place on the famous Orient Express where a mobster, kidnapper and a murderer was killed. Yes, we are only talking about one person here, Ratchet, also known as Cassetti.
To begin with, Hercule Poirot. Even more famous than the man himself is his moustache as his little grey cells. Hercule Poirot, a Belgian private detective, unsurpassed in his intelligence and understanding of the criminal mind, respected and admired by police forces and heads of state across the globe. The world-renowned detective was also on the Orient Express where the murder took place. Latest news show that just before the train took off, the detective was in a completely playful and jolly mood. He was also very funky and fuzzy. This showed that he had no worries at that moment and was relaxed. After he was assigned the case by M. Book, his face showed curiousness about what actually happened on the train that night. He was also really surprised by the fact that Ratchet was killed right after the day he asked Poirot to take his case. Was this a coincidence, or was it all planned? His inquisitive eyes showed curiousness and his persistence to catch the murderer.
Monsieur Book. Poirot's old friend and companion, Monsieur Book, runs the train company Orient Express. Compared to Poirot's quick mind, he has a rather slow wit. He is kind of Sherlock Watson. He accidentally meets Poirot and he is very delighted to do so. Because of his benevolent personality, Book got Poirot a place on the train although it was full. Book knew Poirot from their old days working in the Belgian police force. The murder on the train altogether changed his calmness into concern. He was anxious about how the murder will affect the train's reputation. He quickly jumps to conclusions based on his own prejudices because he wants to minimize public negativity. Book also has this sly look on his face which shows how he hands over the case to Poirot instead of the Yugoslavian authorities out of greed and shame as he wants all of this to get over as soon as possible.
Ratchet, aka Cassetti. Ratchet is rotten to the core. We mean he kidnapped and murdered an innocent little girl and therefore symbolizes the ultimate evil villain. He's a mobster, a kidnapper of children, a murderer, and basically just an all-round monster of a person. In fact, he's the only person in this novel that we know is straight up evil. He wanted to extort money from wealthy families. From the moment he got on the train, he was cautious about his surroundings because he got murder threats. Throughout all the while he was alive, he had this sly look on his face with greedy eyes. With the looks alone, Poirot says, I could not get rid of the impression that evil has passed me by very close. Ratchet appears to have no conscience, and Poirot describes him as a wild animal.
Mary Debenham. Mary Debenham is a young English governess who appears to fit the unhappy, uptight stereotype. But the truth is that she is passionate and forceful, although she hides her former role as governess to Daisy Armstrong. Because she is less than forthcoming and refuses to explain the overheard conversation, she becomes a top suspect in the murder of Samuel Ratchet, and indeed she plays a central role in his death. She is actually the most attractive and interesting female on the Orient Express. Poirot describes Mary as cool and efficient, a formal and somewhat uncaring English lady. In the beginning, when Poirot meets her, she is shown as carefree, which tells us that she doesn't care about the murder that she is a part of. To check whether Poirot was suspicious, she asks a lot of questions to him when they first meet. She had calm and cool eyes. Also, after the murder, she tries to stay calm and pretends that everything is fine. Her behavior changes to an extent where she tries hard to cover the lies. She continues to prove her innocence to Poirot by acting in a kind manner and pretending to not know anything about the murder. Also, she proves her innocence by breaking down into tears, and Colonel Arbuthnot must rescue her, which makes the readers feel more sympathy for Mary. She is not too independent or masculine.
Mrs. Hubbard. Mrs. Hubbard is the elderly American woman who is always talking about her daughter. She plays a pivotal role in planning and executing Ratchet's murder and very nearly escapes suspicion. Credits to her acting skills. She explains how they decided to take justice into their own hands and punish Cassetti. She stands out for her sheer Americanness and very dramatic attitude. Before the murder, she acts friendly and sociable with Poirot and Ratchet, both to attract them and avoid any suspicion later. However, after the murder took place and Poirot started questioning and interrogating everyone, Mrs. Hubbard became very defensive against him. Along with her facial expression and dramatic acting show, she tries to cover the lies and the loose ends. Further down the questioning by Poirot, Mrs. Hubbard reveals that she is Linda Arden, grandmother of Daisy Armstrong, and gets emotional to prove Poirot that she is innocent and planned the murder for a reason: revenge.
Colonel Arbuthnot. Colonel Arbuthnot was a hard-willed, polite, and very English man, although he was from India. He is in love with Mary Debenham and is always there to defend her. Poirot suspects him when he called Mary by her first name rather than Mrs. Debenham on the train to Istanbul. He's a very stuffy man and didn't like Americans. In the beginning, he acts like nothing is going to happen and he is in a very jolly mood on the boat. Later, it is seen that he is in a pensive mood and is in grave thoughts about his wrongdoings. The audience can see the slight glimpse of guilt on his face when Poirot informs him and other passengers about Ratchet's death.
Princess Dragomirov. Princess Dragomirov is a generally despicable, ugly old lady, and her yellow toad-like face seems to annoy Poirot to some extent. She represents fierce loyalty and the triumph of mind over matter. Though she is shown feeble and elderly, she has more strength in her convictions than her physical strength. She walks in with a lot of attitude and confidence because of her belonging to a higher class. She looks frail but is tough. After the murder was committed, her attitude changes to that of guilt and weariness. She looks down when Poirot is interrogating her, which suggests that she accepts that she was guilty and was involved in the murder. She is the owner of the handkerchief that was found in Ratchet's room and tells Poirot many lies about the other passengers' true identities.
Hector McQueen. The young American Hector McQueen is Mr. Ratchet's secretary. He provides an alibi for the night of the murder for Colonel Arbuthnot, with whom he had a long and involved discussion about India and politics. McQueen, with his expressions and actions, tries to prove his innocence but was unable to do so. McQueen tries too hard to tell Poirot that Ratchet did not speak any French, making him an immediate suspect in the case. He is a likable young fellow in personality. However, his expressions show otherwise, probably because he was overthinking about the murder. This did not change after the murder took place. He was still panicky and nervous about the whole situation.
Countess. She is a quite young, dark-haired and beautiful young woman traveling on with a diplomatic passport. She did not murder Ratchet, but because the Countess is closest to the Armstrong case, she attempts to conceal her identity by dropping grease on her passport and smudging the name label on her luggage. She is the only one of the passengers who is innocent. She doesn't show many emotions throughout and is tense as well.
Count Angeni. Count Rudolf Angeni is a Hungarian man who is very protective of his young wife Helena, to whom he has been married for about a year. He acts as her surrogate in killing Ratchet. He is at least 6 feet in height with broad shoulders and slender hips. He is a very defensive man who tries to conceal the true identity of his wife, Countess Angeni. He always had a serious look on his face and didn't really show emotions unlike the other characters. Since he entered the train, the Count was angry and tensed. This remains the same throughout the investigation too. He is easily agitated and becomes violent within minutes. This shows how frustrated he was by Poirot's questions as he was unable to justify the loose ends in his story.
Hardman. Hardman was a detective with a well-known detective service in New York City. He became involved with the Armstrongs when he was in love with Daisy's French nurse who committed suicide after Daisy was killed. He pretends to help Poirot with the case. Poirot found this out when he had a conversation about the beauty of foreign girls with Hardman, and he saw that sudden tears came into his eyes. This led Poirot to believe that Hardman had been in love with a foreign girl. The French maid would have been the girl. He was being professional and careful about this murder. His presence on the train ensured that no outsiders are wrongly accused of the crime. From the beginning itself, it seemed that he had a motive behind coming on the train. After the murder took place, he watched others but didn't participate, maybe because he believed that Ratchet deserved it.
Antonio Foscarelli. The loud and talkative Italian man, Antonio Foscarelli, provides a foil to the taciturn English valet, Mr. Masterman. Foscarelli's Italian heritage attracts M'Bouk's suspicion, as M'Bouk believes that all Italians are knife-wielding murderers. Foscarelli was the chauffeur at the Armstrong house. He's being tortured by Ratchet and he knows what's going to happen. Thus, he ignores and keeps his anger unnoticed. As a result, he keeps a confused look on his face as if he had no idea about the murder. Just like everyone else on the train, Foscarelli is nervous and tense during the investigation by Poirot.
Schmidt. She was Princess Dragomirov's maid, and an incredibly loyal one at that. She was rather slow-minded and unquestioningly carries out the ugly princess's orders. She pretends to be Princess Dragomirov's maid, but was truly the Armstrong's cook. She had a kindly face set in an expression of placid stupidity. She was always close to Princess Dragomirov. This way, she felt confident and careless because she knew that she had the princess's back in case anything goes wrong. The title of princess gives the maid a sense of safety from the investigation. However, after the murder took place, this look on her face changed completely. It was now the look of guilt and overthinking about her actions.
Pierre Michel, father of the suicidal nurse Mary of Daisy Armstrong, is the conductor of the Orient Express. Pierre, like the other servants, does not initially receive much scrutiny. He is not the top suspect. However, as the story progresses, his involvement in the murder is proven essential. He was from the very start thoughtful of his doings and cautious about it. This later changes into panic and fear, fearing that Poirot would come to know about the truth.
To conclude, in the beginning, the characters, though knew each other very well as they all were connected to the Armstrong case, didn't really interact. This is a bit awkward as they are trying hard not to talk, though all of them were connected. This suggests that they knew about an investigator's presence on the train and so didn't want it to get in any trouble for the crime that they all were going to commit. In the end, Poirot finally joins all the ends and finds out that they all are connected and had the motive to kill their common enemy, Ratchet. In the final scene, all the murderers sit together portraying that the main intent to come on the train was to take revenge.